On today's episode of Oh So Curious, we're talking about Indy. Indy's back and he's here for his last hurrah. And I went and saw the movie. And joining me today, we have Angelina. Angelina, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm coming to you live from Miami I'm literally outside, like on a lake. So if I get eaten by mosquitoes and you see me spotted something today, that's what it is.
I am honestly jealous because, like, as you can tell, I am not outside. I've
Yeah.
actually had to pull the curtains on the window, so I think it's sunny out. But like, for the sake of lighting and everything, gotta look a
Hmm.
little dramatic.
Yeah.
Um, but hey, at least the one thing we have in common, it's hot outside where you are
Yes.
and where I am. It just happens to
Yeah.
be the view is a lot better for you than it is for me. So,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm
um,
hoping you get to go to Florida soon.
yeah, I gotta, yeah. I mean, hey, it's only well, I guess it's July now, so like it's not quite the
Yeah.
start of summer, but it's we're in the thick of it now. So, without any further ado, I do want to touch upon Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It's
Hmm.
the fifth movie in the franchise. It's the last one with Harrison Ford, and I mean,
Is
who
it
knows
for
for how
sure the
long.
last one? He's passing the torch in this movie.
All right, so a little bit of a spoiler out the gate here. The movie kind of ends with a cheeky sort of a goodbye in the sense that uh I want to give you the context of all the scene, but like he's got his hat drying on a clothes line like right outside his apartment, and then the shot kind of closes in like a circle, like this old school movie kind of a thing, and then it holds on the hat for like a few seconds, and then you see him kind of pull it away, and then the circle closes. We go to black. So they sort
I
of
feel like that's a spoiler that leaves it open ended.
it's open ended. It's definitely open ended.
Yeah.
Like they were like he's not quite like literally he's not hanging it up just yet in a manner of
Hmm.
speaking. And well, I guess that was a bigger spoiler because then that tells you he doesn't die at
Actually,
the
that
end.
just gives me, I just got
Yeah.
goosebumps. I was like, that's good. That's great. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
good cinema when you don't quite know.
Yeah. It's a good movie. I
Overall,
like
yeah.
I, I was just gonna say the movie I love this movie because it has a bit of a throwback like essence to it. It's much like Top Gun Maverick, and not the same way, but it feels like one of those old school summer action adventure movies where they're not worried about like saving the world or anything like that, anything like dour or like everything is on the line. It's just a big adventure film. The characters are after something. You have a lot of action set pieces. You have clever dialogue. There's some good character development, and you're watching a character that regardless of how many of the previous films you've seen of Indiana Jones or not. Which I think a lot of people that will go to see this movie on opening weekend have probably seen all of the previous movies because like my theater was packed on a Thursday night. Now, granted, it's a Thursday night, but I have to be honest, the reactions were great. Everybody like was rousing and cheering for the big moments, and it was a family crowd. Like you had like there was people sitting next to me. It was entire family on both sides. There were two families, so you had kids, you had adults, you had people of all ages. So I think the movie is doing well with audiences. Its audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is like in the high 80s, I believe. A critic score is in the
High
60s.
80s is pretty good.
Yeah, but like honestly, I see what some of the critics are saying in terms of the pacing of the movie or the fact that it doesn't really tread a whole lot of new ground for Indiana Jones because like
Hmm.
for a franchise that's been as wild and exotic in the past in terms of the stories and the places that it goes and the kind of twists and turns you see, this one doesn't really seek to reinvent the wheel or like what Top Gun Maverick did with like they were like we're not reinventing the wheel, but we're gonna do what we have done before way better than it's ever done before ever. So
So
they,
let me ask you some
yeah.
questions about the movie. I didn't get a chance to go see it. So like, I definitely want to go see it. To somebody who hasn't gone to see it yet, what are the top three selling points to go see this movie?
I would say if you want to go watch a summer action adventure movie, like for example, if you grew up on the National Treasure movies, or if you are a
Yeah.
big Indiana Jones fan, or if you just like those kind of movies, and since Uncharted, you've been, waiting for
And
that
it sort of
next
has that
kind of
like feel good adventure about it.
exactly.
I love
And
that.
that's
That's a little bit more
yeah,
lighthearted, especially because hitting on what you said earlier, I feel like so many movies have been end of the world doomsday movies lately, and
yeah,
it's a little exhausting. Like
yeah,
mentally, it's exhausting. So it's fun to sort of tap into that sort of like careless feeling.
yeah.
How would you say this movie holds up to the last ones? Because this is the first movie in like what 20 years?
Well, like in a decade and a half almost. I think the last one came out in 2008.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Indiana Jones and the Legend of the Crystal Skull. So,
Oh, that one
or the
didn't do
Kingdom of
well,
the Crystal
right?
Skull, I should say.
I was like, I've
So
heard
is
bad things about that movie.
Yeah, it's been a while. Now, I will address this. So you said like three reasons why you should go watch this movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so one reason was because it's a great adventure film. The second reason was because Shia LaBeouf is not in this. So I'll talk to you, answer the second question in a bit with that. Um, well, and I'm
Okay.
actually a Shia LaBeouf fan, but like I don't think he was the best fit for this franchise, and he was in the
Yeah.
last movie. And then the third reason would be because this movie is really got an old school upbeat attitude about it in terms
Mm,
of how nowadays movies kind of feel like, oh, to make it grounded, something like, dour has to happen somewhere. Whereas like a Top Gun Maverick, they like last year, they had go on this mission. Yes, things don't go according to plan, but ultimately they pull through, and it's got this like upbeat ending. This movie similarly is got this like upbeat ending where they kind of tease you with a few things like, oh, Indy's gonna die, and he's gonna die again, spoiler alert. But like there's this funny scene where he's like he wants to stay in the past. He's like, I gotta do this. I have to do it. And then Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character is like, well, so do I. And then she like punches and knocks him out so that she can bring him back to their present, which is like 1969, I think, right after the Apollo
wait,
11 mission.
are they time hopping in this
Yeah,
movie?
well, the Dial of Destiny is basically a time travel device.
Oh, wow, big spoiler, guys. Sorry.
I, it was sort of hinted at in the trailer anyway.
And
Like
I was
that part
like,
of it is not so much the spoil. I'm not
how
telling you
does
like
Phoebe
where
Waller
they're
Bridge?
going,
Oh,
but yeah.
okay. Well, how
Um,
does Phoebe Waller Bridge do? Because I know a lot of people were excited to see her. Some had a little bit of a question about it.
yeah. So Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, I think, is a better fit for this franchise than Shia LaBeouf's character was
Mm,
as Indy's son in the Crystal Skull film. So, um, because here she's basically playing his goddaughter, and you kind of see that set up in the beginning of the movie, where her dad and Indy are like on this adventure back in the 40s, trying to steal this dial of destiny from a Nazi on a train, and that's where you see the de-aged Harrison Ford, which I got to be honest, like in the first 10 minutes of the movie, the de-aging in this movie is great. Like Disney is the best on the planet as far as the studio goes, or like anybody in general de-aging people. So I thought the de-aging was fantastic. You can put de-age Harrison Ford from this movie up against one of his movies from back in the 80s when he was in the peak of his prime. And I think it will, I mean, yeah, is it exactly the how you would want it to be? No, but it
but
is
question:
95% there.
when you see it, are you like, oh god, that's CGI?
No, no. I mean, if anything was jarring, I'm like, oh my God, wait. Like, it was actually so good in some places. I was like, holy shit, did they actually pull footage from like one of his older movies and
Like
just
an
kind of cut and
archive?
paste it somehow? It's that good. I mean, and I know that's not what they're doing. That's part of the technique. They will go and like teach the AI model like all those old images. They'll feed it millions of images from his past work to help kind of put together what they got here. And then they still do other work on top of that, other VFX work beyond what the AI generates. However, I will say that de-aging in this is probably some of the best de-aging I've ever seen, especially considering you're taking a Harrison Ford who is in his 80s and trying to make him look like he's in his 40s. That's a lot more than what they were trying to do in The Irishman, where you're trying to take guys in their 90s and turn them into guys in their 60s or 70s. So I definitely, and then, you see him at different stages of his career. You even see him like, maybe like what he might have looked at when he was 50, 60 years old, and then his present day look. So they de-age him to like different parts of his past life.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will say, Phoebe, again, going back to Phoebe Waller-Bridge, her character was fantastic. She really has the charisma to, I think, carry her own movie, as like if they wanted to pass this franchise off and do a spin-off with her character. I forgot I think it was like Helena Shaw, I think was her name, in the movie. So as far as how it compares to the Crystal Skull, I would say this movie, while Crystal Skull somehow got better reviews, I think part of that was because while this movie is that throwback, uplifting kind of has that spirit, the movie watching viewing world, I think the world in general, I think coming off COVID and everything else, these days people are like, it has to be such a big home run to be great. And I think like the 77% I think Crystal Skull has for its Rotten Tomatoes score versus somewhere in the 60s. It's going to fluctuate still for Dial
But
of
people
Destiny.
do talk about the Crystal Skull as being like the
The
worst Indiana
worst.
Jones
So
movie.
that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I don't think this movie should be rated lower than like,
Yeah.
but I get
So
it.
you
Like,
don't think it doesn't quite hit as well as like the first two?
it's like it's not, it doesn't reinvent the wheel. It's not but okay, so maybe I should state that differently. It doesn't really tread a ton of new ground for this franchise. Like
Okay.
but at the same time it doesn't feel like a by the numbers story either. I will say that some of the things felt by the numbers, like they had like a really they had this young kid in the movie who's sort of like they don't really say he's like adopted or anything. He's just like Helena Shaw is sort of just taking him in as like her protege, and he's like basically the same age as Kai Wan. What was his name? He was in Everything Everywhere All at Once. He was really famous for the Indiana Jones franchise, but I'm forgetting his name. Kai Hui
I
Kwan.
He won a bunch of awards for everything. I can't.
He won the award. Kai Hui Kwan. That's his name.
There we go.
Hui
I was
Kwan.
like, what is his
I'm
name?
mispronouncing his name. I'm butchering it, but he was like that young kid in like the original movies
Yeah.
that in the like. So it was again because this is a 4 quadrant movie. You're appealing to the entire family. So they had a kid in this movie. I don't remember the name of the actor, but like he played that kind of a role throughout the film. And the big thing that I liked about this movie was each of those main characters had agency. None of them were damsels in distress at any point in time. They were each able to fight their own battles, and then they were each able to rescue each other at some point or another. Indy gets shot at one point. I mean, and then he eventually survives. But like so everybody kind of goes through their trials and tribulations. You get some of those signature moments, like they're running through a tunnel and there's bugs falling from both sides. So you get the jitters like as you're watching the movie, the creepy crawlies. So definitely watch out for that if you are not into watching like spiders and
Well,
insects on screen.
so I guess my biggest thing is like addressing the elephant in the room. Harrison Ford is 80 years old.
Yeah.
He's doing an adventure movie. He has to be doing a lot of movement. Like how does he perform? Is it noticeable that he's getting much older? Like I feel like Keanu Reeves, because he does all of his own stunts, you could tell that he was moving slower than when you watch the original Matrix movies.
Yeah.
And like physically, these movies are a lot of work. It's long set days, 12, 14 hours. Like I'm sure they allow Harrison Ford like shorter days, but it's still a lot of work. And so I'm like curious to know how his performance was.
I actually remember thinking to myself, like, I was surprised, specifically in some scenes where I was like, he's moving like a very spry 80-year-old. Like, he is. And obviously there's a lot of stunt work in this movie. There's a lot of scenes where like I'm sure he's not doing the stunts himself, but even the scenes where you can clearly tell like he's the one going from like he's running up the stairs or down the hallway, or like there's a few shots where maybe he's the one swinging his arm to like land a punch. He moves really well for somebody his age, and he's
Which we
aged quite
love.
well.
I think it's awesome.
So,
and he looks great
yeah.
for 80 years old. Didn't we talk about this? We talked about this, I want to say like months ago when it was first announced that they were going to be doing this movie. And I thought he was in his 60s. And you were like, no, he's like 80 years old. Yeah. And I was like,
he was in his 60s, like when they came out with the last movie.
So. And he was so great. And he did so much of the stunts himself, which I love. I mean, Harrison Ford is always going to be like a James Dean kind of dude. Like we love him so much.
He's going through a whole career renaissance right now. Like he's got a show on Apple TV Plus. He's gonna be he's gonna be Thunderbolt Ross in the new Marvel. I forget. It's like it's him and what is he's I'm gonna look this up real quick because if you want to watch this show, this is a show that's getting great reviews. It's called Shrinking. It's him and Jason Segel. So
I think I have heard of it.
No.
I've seen it. I've seen a couple episodes. I like didn't even realize it. He's great. He does a really good job, and it's a little quippier. It's funnier. I haven't really seen Harrison Ford do like quippy, like funny. He plays a completely different character. It's great.
Exactly, and that's really the thing about this show. He's playing a shrink. He's playing like a therapist to Jason Segel's character, and it's Yeah, I mean, he's really, you could tell that Harrison Ford's having fun with the role, and in addition to that, he's obviously getting, going back and doing a lot more movies now. You like got
Mhm.
this Indiana Jones movie, which was a big send off. He got a standing ovation for his life and career at the Cannes Film Festival. He's gonna be in the Thunderbolts movie for Marvel now, playing the Thunderbolt Ross essentially, which
Yeah.
used to be played by William Hurt, and then he passed away over the course over the last couple of years
Why did you
through the
laugh when you
pandemic.
said that?
I
Oh dear
don't know
God.
why I laughed. I am so sorry. But William
Oh
Hurt
my
passed away a couple of
God.
years ago. So now you have Harrison Ford taking over the role. I
Mm,
really, when they had first announced it, I was like, I don't know if I can see Harrison Ford as, because
yeah.
they've been seeing William Hurt play that role for like the better part of a decade, and so it was like I was like, I
It's
don't know
always
if I
kind of
can.
sad and like questions about it, which leads into our next
Yeah.
conversation a little bit later. But just one more question. I wanted to, oh, well, not even a question. The box office numbers are great. It's higher than projected. They are projecting this to be a bigger global opening than The Little Mermaid, which is huge.
Yeah, I mean, the last I checked, it was opening domestically like 60, 65, and then
Yeah,
worldwide like 140. And then that's over
146.
the 3-day weekend. And I think if
Yeah.
you count in 4th of July and you'd add the 5 days together, it's even high. Well, the number would be higher. So it's
Yeah.
not bad. It's not
So it's
starting off bad.
projected 146 million for a 5 day opening weekend. Little Mermaid had a 4 day opening weekend, and I think only hit 118 mil.
Yeah, and then the thing about Little Mermaid was, I mean, it's snuck its way up to 500 to a very respectable number.
Oh yeah,
Like it's made like a $500 million. But the thing about Little Mermaid is, I think what's holding it back and has held it back, and similarly with Across the Spider-Verse, both of those movies have played really, really well with the domestic U.S. and Canadian audiences. However, internationally, they really have not done well. So like that's held their numbers down. And then on the other flip side of that, Fast X really like tanked domestically pretty quickly, but internationally it's pulling in huge numbers, and that's why
so weird to me. I'm like
But
that. See, that I mean, this might really
yeah,
piss off people that love those movies, but there are too many of them. It needs to end. Like I just feel like these actors are milking people for money at this point. Like we get it. The story has played out. How many years are you going to be racing these cars? Like
yeah,
I don't.
they're not really even racing cars anymore. I think they stopped racing cars like a long time ago.
The
But
whole point of the movies. Make it
the,
stop.
Yeah. No, hey, look, I'll be honest with you. I think the last few movies have been declining in quality, like progressively
Yeah,
getting worse. I think Furious 7, since then, I mean, well, Hobbs and Shaw was a good movie. Hobbs and Shaw was good. It was a
yeah.
spin-off with The Rock and Jason
I like
Statham.
that actor. What is her? I don't remember her name, but I really like her from The Crown. She's a
Oh,
really
Vanessa
great
Kirby?
actor. Yeah,
Is that her?
I
Yeah.
love her.
She's in the new Mission Impossible movie too. So we'll
Ah,
be
there we
seeing
go.
her soon. But yeah, as far as this movie goes, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I will say the budget for this movie was somewhere in $300+ million or like close to it. And
Oh my God.
then you can imagine how much they spent on marketing. They took it to Cannes. They've, been throwing a lot of money at it because they need to get the awareness of this out there. I just think this particular film is about 5 to 6 years too late, because the franchise, unlike Star Wars, which has really, brought along a lot of the younger audiences through video games and comics and other
Mm-hmm.
things while the movies were dormant. And then, of course, they had the sequel trilogy, which I don't know how many new fans it made or how many it lost, but whatever. Indiana Jones, on the other hand, like the last movie came out 13 years ago, or actually more, like 15 years ago. And then before then, they hadn't had a movie in like a decade or so. And so this franchise hasn't really had a presence in other mediums like books or comic books or games. So there
Wait, there
isn't
were
really an
video games,
audience.
weren't they?
But it's not like it's Star Wars. Like, it's
Yeah,
not at that
no.
level.
They
Like
have
it's
like
I mean, it's
new sort of idealations of
yeah, a lot
it.
of movies have video games, but like very few
Iterations
movies
was
like
the
have
word
the
I was looking
ability to kind of translate across to a video game. Like
for.
Star Wars, there's like if you play Star Wars Battlefront, any of those games, or like the Jedi Order games, like there's a lot of games where there's fans of Star Wars that have barely seen any of the movies and have just played the games. So you can't really say the same for Indiana Jones. So I think for a franchise that really its audience is literally, its fan base is literally getting older and older and dying because they were like in their prime back when Harrison Ford was in his prime. It was going to be hard to pull in the kind of audience that the kind of numbers you would need to justify the budget that this movie has. So I do think for a movie that needs to make $700 million to break even, it's going to struggle to get there. It will depend on how much legs it has, because it's got Oppenheimer, Barbie, you've got Joyride coming out next week. There's a bunch, Mission Impossible coming out. So there's so many other big movies coming out in the next few weeks that it's going to be hard for Indiana Jones to really have the runway that it needs to make the money back to justify its budget. And I don't think it's going to make as much as the previous movie did, which I think was somewhere in the 700 million. If it makes it that far, it's broken even in its theatrical run. It may still break even post theatrical when, with home theater, premium, video on demand, whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of movies out there this year that have flopped with bloated budgets. Like Fast 10 had a budget
They're
of like
just spending so much
350.
money on these movies. It's like impossible to break
Yeah.
even.
I'm like, these studios need to realize, like, look, the box office is already still hurting from COVID. Like, yeah, we are a year
But
or
you
so
know what?
removed.
I think
But still.
that's money spent in the sense that no matter what, once it goes to streaming, it will eventually, through those contracts, break even.
It will, but why not like spend half as much money and more than break even in theaters, and then everything else is gravy from afterward? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you could still make an argument that I mean, look, of the 300 million they spent on Indiana Jones 5, most of that, not most, but like a significant chunk of that budget went towards de-aging Harrison Ford. And so if you had done this movie like 3-4 years after the previous one, maybe you didn't have to de-age him so much. Like but one thing they did kind of explain, I know that people are probably wondering, that in this movie they explained how or what happened to Indy's son. And spoiler
that was
alert,
one of my question earlier. Okay,
yeah,
I need to know.
Okay, so spoiler alert: Shia LaBeouf's character, who plays Indy's, Indy's son from the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, there's this one little monologue in this movie where Harrison Ford, kind of describes Indy's like, well, he enlisted in the war, the Vietnam War, and I would have there was a conversation where Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Helena Shaw asks him, what would you have, if you were able to go back in time, what would you have done differently? And Indy replies by saying, well, I would have gone and talked to my son and told him not to enlist in the war. He did it to piss me off, and I would have told him that he would die, and then that his mother wouldn't be able to cope, and then then I wouldn't be able to console her, and it would end our marriage. And so basically the movie starts, at the beginning there's like a separation notice, like a divorce papers, and so it's already kind of hinted at that his marriage is like basically done.
Died in the war.
So they killed off Shia LaBeouf's character off screen, which I mean, the circumstances of it, like in that scene, I'm like, I don't care if Shia LaBeouf was playing it. I feel for Indy, because no parent should have to bury their
That's
kid.
so sad. Okay, but that wasn't the answer I wanted. But that's one of my biggest peeves, is when they leave those threads open for you to be like, and too many movies have done it. Like The Mummy. I'm sorry, what? You just recast Rachel Weisz like that? Like in the third movie for what? And no explanation? Her character is just played by somebody else? Like you have lost me there.
Yeah, I mean, can I ask you, like, would you go watch this movie?
Yeah. I was actually really excited to do it, you guys, but I caught a red eye. I didn't sleep at all. And then I fell asleep. It was supposed to be an hour nap. I fell asleep for like 3.5 hours and my day was gone. But I think I will still go see it. Yeah. Because it's the nostalgia feeling, right? And then it's the feel good. It sort of resets the slate. As I said, I feel like I've seen, especially because I was catching up on the DCU, or not the DCU, the MCU. I get them all confused, y'all. I can't be the only one. I was catching up on MCU and watching it timeline by timeline. When I tell you I am sick of watching superheroes save the world every day, I'm done. I need a break. I need a break. It was too much,
Yeah.
too quick.
I,
So
I did
it'll be,
enjoy the difference, like the breath
yeah,
of fresh air this movie does provide. Yeah.
exactly. So I definitely will go see it. What are the critics saying? Critics are giving it around 60%.
It's somewhere in the 60s. It's fluctuating still, but it's gonna land somewhere in the mid 60s
Yeah,
ultimately. Um, and
I
and
feel like
and
it's
the
pretty
movie,
normal for these movies.
yeah, I mean, look, like the Rotten Tomatoes score isn't exactly like a grade. The way it basically works is it's an aggregate score. So if it's a 65, let's say, means that for every 100 people that watched it, 65 liked it, 35 didn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good number. Like,
Yeah.
so like it's certified fresh at this point. It's got enough reviews to be that. So yeah, I mean, look, I think this is the kind of movie, because it appeals to families and it's a true four quadrant movie like Top Gun Maverick was. I think this, while it probably won't make $1 billion like Top Gun Maverick did, because it would have to really have legs to do that.
Well,
I don't
also
think Disney's gonna
the
commit to.
numbers, right?
Yeah,
Like when you talk about Fast X having too many movies, and this is the fifth Indiana Jones, it
yeah,
doesn't have as much meat on it. With making
yeah.
a sequel to Top Gun, which was like the one and only, that's
30 years in the make. Yeah.
yeah, it's
It's
just
also, I think there's a lot more, there's more big movies coming out after
mhm.
this in the next few weeks than for Top Gun Maverick had basically an open runway literally
That's
to make as
true.
much money as it could. And then
Wow, you
Paramount was
just made an
committed to keeping it in
airplane
theaters.
joke. Ha
Yeah.
ha ha. So funny.
I did so literally. So, yeah, anyway.
So funny.
I will say this, at the end of the day, if you guys want to check out Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, go check it out. But Matt Mikkelsen, Boyd Holbrook, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Harrison Ford, it's a fantastic movie. I had a really good time at it. It's a good summer film. If you just want
Love it.
to go with your family, you want to get date night. If you just want to go by yourself, go watch this movie. It's 2.5 hours, and I felt it in a couple of spots, but overall, it's a great experience. Go check it out. Hey guys, welcome to DCU Daily. And on today's show, the very first episode of DCU Daily, I mean, how can we not start this new universe, this new DC universe, than by talking about Superman Legacy, the first movie in the DCU? It's going to be starring, and now we know who is going to be starring, not only Superman, but also Lois Lane. And both of them have been cast now. David Corenswet, he's going to be playing Clark Kent. And then Rachel Brosnahan, who you might know from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, is going to be playing Lois Lane. And so today with me, I've got Angelina, a special guest on DCU Daily. Angelina, what do you think about these castings? Like, both of these actors, they're not like A-listers, but like, and then, they're varying degrees of experience. What do you think about their fit for these iconic characters?
So, it's actually interesting you say that because I think Rachel Brosnahan would be considered an A-lister in TV. This is going to
Mm-hmm.
be one of the first major movies we've seen her in. Before I read how many tests they did, because they did full hair and makeup tests for this casting, they did it for a total of like 3 Superman, like full Superman outfits. They did,
Yeah.
so they gave them 2-week testing deals for each Superman. So they really, really they did the work, they did their homework, and they really I have to assume that they did a good job with casting, right? Because the amount of time and effort that went into this is pretty extensive. Like, that's probably the most amount of homework that casting directors will do and will ask for before roles are cast. Rachel Brosnahan, she's such a comic. So Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is one of my favorite shows. I think Rachel is incredible. I think she's brilliant. She's a comedy actor though, so I'm a little bit intrigued, but I have to trust that the new DCU team did their work and she has more to offer than what was shown. But with that being said, I don't know. It's hard for me to see her like that because she's Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She's literally playing a comic in the show. She is a comic. She's hilarious. She's a great actor. I just don't know if she sort of captures that Lois Lane sort of ingenue typecast. I don't know.
Yeah.
And Corenswet, I just gotta say, memes waiting to happen. What his name? His name, Corenswet. Does Superman sweat? Corenswet will.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like you said before we started doing this, like there's gonna be probably some videos of him behind the scenes working out, pumping some iron before he goes into it,
Yeah,
does like an action sequence, and that's gonna become a meme. Corn sweat, like that's Dave. I don't know. Like that's I can see that. Like there's already Twitter's
right.
already had a field day with that. But look, I'll be honest with you. Like one thing that I looked at this casting and said is, okay, they're definitely going for something that's sort of in between what Henry Cavill's Superman was in terms of the Man of Steel and how that take on the characters and what Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder, particularly with Lois Lane. I think we're kind of going like Amy Adams was a great choice. I mean, fantastic actress, Academy Award winning actress, or at least Academy Award nominated. I
I don't
forget if
I
she's
don't know.
won or not, but so great resume. But I don't know if she was she was the perfect fit for the role. Although, in my opinion, she grew into it. I really liked her portrayal by the time we got to like the Zack Snyder Justice League. But I think Rachel Brosnahan, I think definitely fits that Margot Kidder sort of personality role. I don't know how much we can infer regarding the quality of, or not the quality necessarily, but the take on these characters that Superman Legacy is going to have. I know that James Gunn, who's going to be directing this movie, he's one of the new leads of the DCU alongside Peter Safran. They have said that they want to make this Superman, someone that, you would love to just hug. And, he's kindness in a world that looks down on that thinks of kindness as old fashioned. That's how he described this Superman. So, I think those are some good sentiments. And I think this casting, there's a lot of castings throughout history, like when Heath Ledger was cast as Joker, when Christian Bale was cast as
Yeah,
Batman, when Ben
true.
Affleck was cast as Batman, even when Christopher Reeve was cast as Superman. People generally either they don't know what to expect or they think they already know that this is going to be really terrible. But then a lot of times you go and you watch the movie and you're like, well, they knew what they were doing. I mean, even with Robert Pattinson playing Batman, Pattinson, all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
like Twilight Boy, whatever. Okay, so basically, I'm gonna say this is going to
Twilight
be
Boy.
very interesting now. 2025 is still a couple of years out, and this movie's got a lot of work to do, and it's probably going to have to, sit through and weather some strikes along the way.
Yeah.
So who knows how it's going to get delayed, with that. But I'm glad that they were able to get this casting done before a potential actor strike happened.
Yeah.
The 2-week deals are going to run out soon. So I'm really happy to see that they've got their two leads, and this is going to be the start of a whole new universe. So let's see where that goes. And then for us, DCU Daily, we're gonna be here Monday to Friday. We'll be talking about all things DCU
Hmm.
every week, and I'm glad that we got to start with talking about the casting for their first movie in this new universe.
Yeah.
But until next time. Thanks for joining us in DCU Daily. We'll be back with more updates tomorrow and then the day after. All right. All right, let's talk about the SAG negotiations. They've been going on for a while. We know the WGA is still on strike. They're going on in their third month in the strike now, and it doesn't look like there's an end in sight to that. However, SAG recently, their contract with the AMPTP did expire at the end of July, at the end of June, I should say. But now we are at basically in the middle of no man's land, if metaphorically speaking. But recently, they announced that there's going to be an extension on the talks. So, Angelina, where are the SAG negotiations at, and where are they headed?
Yeah, so as of June 30th, when the clock struck midnight, SAG's contract was expired. Prior to that, Fran Drescher, the SAG president, was in negotiations. So both sides sort of thought, hey, negotiations, we're making some headway. We're not there yet. So they've all agreed to extend the contract until July 12th as of right now. So essentially the next week and a half is going to be no man's land. The contract is up. They're extending the contract sort of temporarily while they try to handle everything for the new contract. As of like 2 days ago, when I sat down and I did a lot of research on where we're at right now, they haven't made the headway they wanted. There are like over 300 celebrities that are gung-ho and ready to strike. International guilds are not hopping on the actor strike like they were hopping on the WGA strike, which is quite surprising. I'll touch a little bit more on this on Quick Hits, which is going to be a new segment here in Oh So Curious. But it's really interesting. Internationally, guilds are like, we don't want to strike. Like, we don't want to do that. They're treading very lightly. Whereas internationally, like international guilds, writers guilds were very supportive of the WGA. So that sort
Yeah.
of tells you where we're at right now. I think SAG doesn't want to strike. Obviously, they will if they have to. There are like 300 big celebrities in support of it. Internationally, not so much. We don't want to strike. We're trying
Yeah.
to work it out. And, you know, originally the contract was only supposed to be extended until July 7th. The fact that they extended it to July 12th to give it more time tells me that both sides really don't want to strike.
Yeah, I mean that's 2 weeks. That's like a 2 week extension. So just for like a layman's terms, like basically what that means, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the contract that was already in place is still in effect, so that if you are
Yeah.
working any SAG, contract projects, you're still able to do that. Like you can
Yeah.
still go to a casting, you can still go to the shoot that you have been cast in already until we get to a point where they do strike. There was this big letter that came out of a couple of days ago from like a bunch of like big A-list actors, as well as a number of, it was like 300 actors or something. They all signed it, and they said, look, we don't need to take a deal here, we don't need to compromise, we are willing to go to on strike. Which I guess, yeah, when the biggest, the most well-known names are putting it out there, that means that they're willing to take the hit too. However, it's not them who's going to be hurting the most if the strike
That's
does
kind of
happen.
my point is
So
like, you know, how many of those A-list actors are actually going to show up to the front lines and go strike?
right,
Like,
and even if they did, I'm
really?
like, their bank accounts are not going to hurt as much. Their
Yeah.
the ability to pay their bills is not going to be as affected as the like the thousands of people who are basically having to hustle every day for their next
Yeah.
gig to make their ends meet. Now, let's see where this thing goes. It's going to be very interesting to see where the negotiations go from here. Obviously, we still have the WGS strike happening. They have not come back to the table. It looks like the MPTP is not going back to that negotiation until at least the SAG one is done. The DGA got their deal. Hopefully, we'll have a resolution to this soon, because, well, all of Hollywood is literally hanging in the balance on this, because otherwise, whatever
Yeah.
production is left
Everything
is going to
is,
get shut down.
yeah,
So,
literally the only thing still fully in full swing are soap operas because those were written way before.
yeah.
And so they're still filming and still coming out, but so many late night shows have gone dark. So many shows are waiting on castings. I like, even just as an actor on the ground, commercials are popping out left and right, commercial auditions left and right. Theatrical auditions, unless you're going for like a short film and you can't even really do SAG shorts, or they're trying to do like micro budget SAG shorts, there's nothing going on right now. Casting
Yeah.
directors are not casting, people are not putting up stuff for agents to submit. It's all just waiting right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's affecting a lot of people's livelihoods. So let's hope
Yeah.
that we get not only the SAG situation resolved soon, but hopefully the WGA can come back to the table and they can hammer out a deal as well. So we'll be following the story here at Also Curious, and we'll get back to you guys with more updates as they develop. But until then, keeping our fingers crossed that SAG and the MPTP can strike a deal. All right. So with that, let's take a look ahead to next week. So next week we have another movie coming out. We have a couple of movies. We have Insidious, The Red Door, but then we also have Joyride. The one that we're going to focus on is Joyride. So Angelina, let me ask you about Joyride. Like, A, have you heard of this movie? B, what do you think about this film, like having seen
So
or read about
before
it?
today, I had absolutely not heard about it at all. I
Yeah.
looked it up because it was on our show preview. I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be cute. I really like Stephanie Sue. That's how you pronounce her name.
Stephanie
I really
Sue, yeah.
love Stephanie Sue. And then what is, Park? Ashley Park from.
It's Ashley Park. Yeah.
Ashley Park from. What is that really bad?
She was in Star
rom-com?
Wars Vision. She voices a few characters there. She was
Well, no,
in
she's
Beef.
famous
That's
for, prior to
have you
that,
seen?
Emily in Paris. That's what she's famous for. That's
She's in
what,
that
like,
show
the OG.
Beef as well. Yeah, yeah. Emily in
Yeah.
Paris is the big one. There's Five Girls, Five Eva, which
Beef, she plays a character I like more. But she's been very much a supporting character and everything. It looks like she's the lead in this movie, so I'm kind of excited to see that and how she comes through.
It's like an
Um,
ensemble, like from what
yeah,
I've heard. Yeah. So I mean, like there'll be, yeah, they're kind of like a group of friends. Like you described it when we were talking about a pre-show,
yeah.
like Hangover, except with
That's what
like
it seems
girls.
like
Yeah.
a feel good hangover. I don't
Mhm.
even know if it's all women, is it? I think it's like three women and one dude.
I well, yeah, I think so, but it's mostly like it's definitely aimed at like a female audience, but it's like a
Yeah.
raunchy comedy. It's
Yeah.
the actually, yeah, you're
They
right.
said
There was like one.
debauchery.
Yeah.
They referenced debauchery, and I'm like, women doing debauchery. I love women doing debauchery.
Yeah, there was I think it was at CinemaCon or one of the recent cons. The
Mm.
director mentioned that the original title for this movie was not Joyride, it was Joy Fuck Club, and they changed it before they took
They
it
said that
to
seems a
distribution.
little extreme.
Um, yeah, I think the idea probably was, look, is it rated R? We get it, but like the Lionsgate, I think, is the studio that's making promoting this movie. Their marketing partner was like, look, we want to make some money here, and some people
We
might just
can't
look at that
just
other
go.
title.
Oh, can't go all crazy out here.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's, the person directing this movie directed Crazy Rich Asians. So there's definitely a good pedigree here in terms of quality.
Hmm.
So, and as far as comedies go, I mean, we had No Hard Feelings come out recently, which seems to be doing relatively well for a comedy. It's not really a breakout hit like the Hangover movies were. There's not a lot of big comedies being made today. Like Seth Rogen produced this movie. So again, you have another big time in name who's known for good comedies. It's the
Honestly,
kind of
I
movie
love that he
that can
directs
help revive
more
the
movies
genre, I
now.
think.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. The
Oh, and
Hangover, you still so good. Like I feel like it's going to be like a hangover, but I'm so excited to see it.
so ultimately, this movie is going to be coming out on a weekend where it doesn't have a lot of competition because Insidious, as a horror film, it's the wrapping up a franchise that has been getting, a lot of diminishing returns with its recent entries, and
But you
it's
know
the
what? Are people going to go see it over Indiana Jones?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, well, look,
Yeah,
Spider-Man
way
Across the
different.
Spider-Verse topped last weekend in like its fifth weekend. So even that is still going strong. You have the Little
Hmm.
Mermaid still out there. You still have the Flash. You have, I think, Guardians of the Galaxy is still there somewhere if you want to still go see that for maybe another week or two. So there's a lot of competition, and certainly Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is out there too. So I will say, if you want to go watch a new movie and you want to go watch a comedy or a horror, Insidious is going to be probably the biggest and the only horror movie that's still relatively new on the
Also,
marquee,
who
and then
releases a horror
Joyride as
movie
a
during the
comedy.
summer?
Hmm.
Who releases a horror movie during the summer? I'm like,
I've
I don't.
seen, well,
I
if
don't want to
there's
be
any,
married in
because this is a
July.
franchise horror film, so I'd see why they released it in the summer. Um, However, I think the timing isn't bad. Let's just say that, because this is one of those summers where after a number of years we're getting big movies almost every week, and this happens to be a weekend where Joyride is your only other big new movie competition.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to see many weekends this summer where you have that. So, yeah, for a movie that's meant to wrap up this franchise before James Wan moves full time over to Blumhouse, away from Warner Brothers. Um, well, I think he might still be doing stuff with Warner Brothers, but it looks like James Wan is exiting the franchise, so they're wrapping things up. They've already been kind of down, like each of the last few movies has been doing less and less in terms of box office, and they
Yeah.
released the last one day and date on HBO Max when they were doing that for a year. So Insidious, I don't think is going to be a big competition. I am excited to see how well Joyride performs, especially with the reviews. I mean, let's see what the reviewers say, and then hopefully the audience rating will be high too. We're gonna go watch it next week. We'll talk about it, and then the week after that, things will get really interesting because I think then we start getting into Barbie, Oppenheimer territory, and Mission Impossible, like all of those other big movies that are gonna be. I think the July is gonna be a fantastic month
Yeah.
for movies.
I'm
So
really excited about Barbie and Oppenheimer.
yeah. Recently, Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie like posted on Instagram. I think it was on Variety Instagram that I saw it, and they were like they had their ticket stubs. They were looking and they were posing in front of the Oppenheimer poster.
Sweet,
Like, we're gonna go
sweet,
see
sign me up.
Oppenheimer. Go support. Like, I'm like, I
Oh,
like
that's
it, the
sweet.
camaraderie.
That is sweet. Yeah.
They're two movies that really don't. I mean, there's gonna be crossover in audiences, but they're
They don't really
targeting
compete. Yeah,
very
other
different
than the
kind of,
weekend,
yeah.
like they're not
So
competing.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Christopher Nolan is like the person that I look up to as
Yeah.
the filmmaker that I would
I
look
think
up to.
Cillian
So
Murphy is like one of the best actors
yeah,
of our time, and I think he's so underrated. So I'm so excited,
yeah.
so excited.
I'm excited because he's been in so many Christopher Nolan movies over the years
Yeah,
and never the lead. He's always playing some side character, some supporting character. So I'm excited to see him lead this, and it's for him as for his career.
yeah,
I think this is gonna be his first like big lead role in a feature. So I'm
yeah. In
excited
a
to see
feature,
it,
I think
and he
Peaky
deserves it.
Blinders really changed everything for
Yeah,
him, which needed to happen. He's so
yeah,
good in Peaky. If you
and
guys
there's still
haven't
gonna
gone
be
to go
movies
see
for
Peaky
that.
Blinders yet, I feel like there's a weird amount of people that haven't seen that show. It's on Netflix. Go watch it. It's
I'm one of
so
those
good.
people, and I still have to go watch it.
Are you for reals? Dan,
Yeah,
I wasn't
I've
even
not
trying to
seen.
like come for you. You have to go
No,
watch
I'm
it.
yeah, I'm gonna go watch it. Trust me, because I know they're doing more. Even though the mainline show ended,
I
I
think they're
think they're
gonna,
meant to do
yeah, they're gonna do
spin-offs
a
and
movie, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they're not done. So yeah, there's still more to come. So yeah, I'm gonna go check it out. It's there's so many seasons. Whenever there's a show that
Just
I'm
watch the
off.
first season and then you're hooked.
Okay, well, fair enough. I'll
There you
give it a
go.
shot. All right. Well, you go watch Joyride next week. I'll go
Yeah.
watch Peaky Blinders. Then we'll come
Okay.
back and compare our notes and see where we are at with with each of those things.
Completely different
two
vibes, but
two
yeah.
very different experiences. Okay, all right. Well, with that, I think we have hit the end of the show here today. We'll be back throughout the week with other content, with other news updates, and then we'll be back next weekend talking about Joyride and who knows what else. Maybe there'll be a SAG deal in place. Maybe we'll have more castings for the Superman movie. Um, and who knows, maybe there'll be something completely unexpected out of the blue that happens that we'll get to talk about as well. But until then, Angelina, thanks for joining me on this lovely weekend. You are, of course, in Miami. I am still very jealous of the fact that you are in Miami because the view is a lot better than what I've got. Um, but hopefully, I'll get to go out and have a vacation with this summer. Until then, let's stay curious. We'll be back next week.
Bye.